Summer 2020 Webinar Series, Technology Supports for Blind and Low Vision Students, sponsored by the California Department of Education, Clearinghouse for Specialized Media and Technology.
All right, so for today, we've got the 3 C's of a digital workflow. We've got capture, convert, cloud, and then in parentheses, because we've got the S, scale up. So we mentioned a couple workshop norms, but please, if you're able to remember to remain muted, please ask all questions in the chat box. That will go right into our Q&A. And I want everybody to remember that technology fails. And this is also just like, in case I blip out, in case my internet dies, I will be right back, okay? We all know technology fails, but it's really the workarounds and the backup systems that matter. So we're gonna talk about how to think about what these workarounds and backup systems look like in the next couple of weeks too. And so ultimately, let's just have fun with our content today. So we've got a couple learning objectives for today. Hopefully at the end of the hour, I hope that everybody will be able to define what a digital workflow means for blind and low vision students. We're also going to go through a couple ideas for how to capture print media into a digital format, and then how to convert digital media into an accessible format. And then finally, how do I share instructional materials in real time via the cloud? So all of these things together, they are critically important now that we're doing a lot of this remote online learning and teaching. And I think now more than ever, this is a huge opportunity for our students to get up to speed on these skills and to engage in information in this virtual format that really, finally, for the first time ever, truly puts them on that same playing field as their peers. Okay, so let's dive in to that first objective. So what is a digital workflow? Okay, so I like to think of the digital workflow as an efficient electronic system for accessing, processing, sharing, and storing work. And I did include a little citation at the bottom of the slide. This is to the recent technology book that Ike Presley and I published. It's called Access Technology for Blind and Low Vision Accessibility. And you can order it in print and EPUB versions from APH. So throughout this presentation and also the other presentations for the rest of the month, I'll be referring to various chapters where you can refer to for more information. All of the information we're going to cover today and in the next couple weeks, it's really just starter information. It's a way for you guys to learn the search terms, to get the concepts, so that you can go deeper, dive deeper, and find more information as you need. Hopefully with the links to specific chapters in the book, that will give you like the reference pages you need to learn more. Okay, so a couple of things about the digital workflow. A digital workflow can provide greater flexibility and portability for our students. It can provide greater and more efficient multimodal access to information. It ultimately empowers students' use of their tool of choice. So when students can decide which tools they want to use when, it facilitates a level of independence and flexibility for these students to decide, you know what, I want to use my low vision tools, I want to use my listening tools, I want to use my Braille tools, and decide for themselves when they want to use which method of access. A digital workflow, it also empowers the general ed support of our VI students. So I think many of us have probably experienced, oh, the VI student, that's your responsibility. I've never had a VI student before, and you get the hands thrown up in the air. But when we start moving to these digital workflows, classroom teachers can start understanding how they can actually connect directly with their blind and low vision students. They can do that direct instruction as they would with any other student, as long as there's that workflow in place. So we will talk more about that too. Digital workflows, I believe, also supports access to information. I used to think of it as supporting access to Common Core curricula, but I realize it's greater than just accessing the curriculum. It's really accessing information in the environment surrounding the student, information in an academic classroom, in a functional living skills classroom. There's such an information-rich environment, especially when you're in the virtual environment. And so these workflows support all different access points for all different types of information. And then finally, for those highly academic students, a digital workflow models college and professional workflows. So we're essentially having the students learn in a way that's going to transfer seamlessly into college and work settings. So that's always nice because, you know, we're planning for tomorrow, planning for next year, and planning for the next placement. And ultimately, we're always planning for the future. Okay, so knowing all the benefits of the digital workflow, how do we think about like what this actually entails? So a successful digital workflow needs infrastructure. I'm a really big person about infrastructure. You need a system to make sure this digital workflow can happen. Number one, reliable internet. A digital workflow, it's all digital media, you know, you're doing things in the cloud, you do need reliable internet for cloud computing. And I do realize that, you know, there is a lot of inequity in this area still, but this is also something that you can help use to advocate for the infrastructure, because if you have a student who really needs to be working online using this digital workflow, you need to advocate that they have reliable internet. It might be providing a hotspot to make sure that there's always internet available, but that's got to be part of the toolbox and part of that consideration. We also need infrastructure for training. So this includes training for teachers, for paraprofessionals, for parents, for administrators, IT directors, tech directors, all sorts of admin, for people to understand what goes into supporting students' digital access. I think a lot of us have also been running up against this training piece this past spring when everything moved online suddenly. So at least this is a more shared problem of the village and not just a problem with VI students needing and teachers needing specialized training for specialized technology. It's really an everybody need. Then we also need resources and savvy thinking for building custom toolboxes. So sometimes that does mean thinking outside the box in terms of what a student needs, but it also means reaching out to your communities of practice, reaching out to different people who are doing different things. You guys are obviously here today and you've got a rich network for resources and ongoing professional development. But it's also reaching out beyond just our little VI community to see, well, what's ed tech doing? What's regular tech doing? What are they doing in college and how are those people handling alternate media there? And really linking all the different resources in different areas together for the benefit of our students. And then finally, there needs to be an infrastructure for reasonable and equitable expectations for our students. I think too often our students grow up with this kind of fallback of, oh, just get sighted assistance. And yes, while we do have to coach our students to ask for help, we also have to expect what they can do independently and encourage that, or at least reach a certain level of interdependence where students can dictate when they want to be dependent and how they want assistance to be provided for them. So this leads us to the idea of student-led digital workflows. And this is another reason why I love talking about workflows so much. It puts the power back into the student's hands. It's no longer teacher directed, but it's truly student directed. So in order to have a student-led digital workflow, students have to have the appropriate technology. And this likely means actually that they've got multiple devices. I know, like, I've run up against this. I'm sure some of you in this webinar have as well. But districts will often say, no, we're only purchasing one thing for our student. But in fact, our students do need to have training and use of multiple devices in order to have the choice of which tool I want to use when to access which type of information. There also needs to be student-centered training. And a lot of times it does get overwhelming with training students on technology. It just seems like, oh my God, there's just so much. Where am I going to get the time to do this? But just as with anything else, I think if you let the students lead where the training takes you, the students can determine what their priorities are. You can kind of go with what motivates a student. And ultimately, you're doing the training so that the students can be able to select, use, and efficiently switch between the tools as determined by the task. So we're basically giving students on-demand accessibility here. And this means that the students have to understand what are the pros and cons of different tools that are going to go in their toolbox. And hey, if I've got a chapter reading versus a worksheet reading, how might I want to use a different tool because it's going to be more efficient for me in that way. I really like this idea of figuring out what the tasks are and helping students make informed choices, really, because then you're ensuring the students buy into technology from the very beginning, because it's always the students making that choice and you're just helping them make that informed decision, okay? And then finally, in order for students to be able to use their devices and make these informed choices, they've got to have accessible digital media in addition to physical media. So I still recognize and I highly value, hard copy print, hard copy large print, hard copy Braille, hard copy tactile graphics, 3D models when you need them. These are all just part of all learning media. So today we're really just focused on the accessible digital media, but with the understanding that there's still a great need and priority for physical media, okay? So the other thing about media is it's just like with everything else. It's on us to ensure that students have accessible educational media. This is required by federal legislation. So although we might teach students sometimes how to use different tools for converting print media or how to use different tools to reformat things, we really want to have kids come into the classroom, physical or digital classroom, and have the materials ready for them, prepared for them. So students do need to have accessible text, images, and videos prepared in advance so that they can come into the classroom and go right to learning. So I've used this word alternate media a couple times already. So I wanted to highlight a key personnel, I think, in providing high quality digital workflows. And this person is an alternate media specialist. This is an actual job title that is commonly found in college and university settings, and I've never seen it in K-12, but I just wanted to share what this job description looks like, okay? So this job description, I just pulled it from the internet, and it's taken from Santa Rosa Junior College HR. And they describe the alt media specialist position as under general supervision. This person will provide and or consult on the adaptation of instructional and student service material into electronic, Braille, and audio formats accessible to students with visual impairments and visual processing disorders, to develop, implement, and coordinate a district access technology plan, provide guidelines and technical assistance to staff, faculty, and external agencies, and serve as a lead worker to other classified staff. And I think this is so interesting because I don't know if you guys are thinking this, but when I first read this, I was like, wow, this is like half of a TVI's job. So I think a lot of what we do, we are working as alt media specialists, but remembering that we need that rich infrastructure to make sure things are, really supported and able to happen. I want to pause for a minute here and launch a poll so that we can brainstorm, in K-12, who might function as that alternate media specialist, because we don't usually have that job position in K-12. So okay guys, I'm going to launch this poll, and what you'll see is you're going to see a pop-up screen, hopefully, if all goes well, and you'll see a question: in K-12 media settings, who might function as an alternate media specialist? And I'm just going to read this before I launch the poll, okay? And you can pick as many choices as you want. There's TVI, paraprofessional, O&M, resource teacher, inclusion specialist, transcriber, parent or guardian, relatives of the student, classroom peers, AT specialist, and classroom teacher. Okay, so you ready, guys? Here we go. Launching. Great. Okay, I think we are up to about 79% of people voted. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results so we can all see what people thought. So pretty much everybody or all the choices were selected in some way or fashion. And there is no right or wrong answer here because it takes a village, right? And it just as it takes a whole class, school, community to support a gen ed student, the same goes for our VI students. So in fact, any of these people that were listed on the poll could be called upon to help with alternate media. Of course, it's probably going to be directed by the TVI, but this is great work that you can train a paraprofessional to help you with. O&M instructors, absolutely, they're going to be involved with this as well because students need to access information while on O&M lessons. Resource teachers and inclusion specialists are great supports as well because oftentimes they're working with and collaborating with classroom teachers anyways to design their lessons. So they're natural fits to help with this alt media because there's a lot of other kids who benefit from, even just text to speech who aren't necessarily low vision or blind. A lot of other kids with those sort of invisible disabilities, they benefit from different ways of accessing information as well. So training our resource teachers and inclusion specialists in alt media ends up benefiting every student in the classroom. Transcribers, of course, they're also natural alt media specialists. Depending on their workload, they can also ensure that the Braille formats are well formatted. And they might be called upon to expand their role. If you have a Braille student who's graduating and now you have a transcriber who's like, oh no, what does that mean for my job? You could potentially retitle that job as an alternate media specialist to expand the scope of their responsibilities. So, I mean, I'm just brainstorming here, but sometimes transcribers, they, it's about job security when a student leaves the district. Parents or guardians, whoever's with the student, especially now, we all know students being, doing remote class, they absolutely need to be called upon to make sure the internet's running, or make sure the accounts are set up, or passwords are working. Classroom peers can also help with this as well, because there's a lot of collaboration that can happen with classroom peers when the media are in good shape. AT specialists, we are going to see some things from Neil McKenzie in Sonoma County. AT specialists are awesome partners in trying to hack technology for our student. And of course, the classroom teacher, as long as the materials are in that accessible format to begin with, it makes it a lot less work for everybody else on the team. And then I see in the chat, yes, eventually the students themselves are going to be their own best alt media specialists. But remember that in K-12, we do want the students to come into class with the materials prepared for them. We don't want students to come into class and have to convert the materials themselves. But yeah, they should be aware of the process so that if they're in a restaurant and there's a menu, they can quickly use some sort of technology to read that menu. Or when they go to college, they can dictate how they want their alternate media to be formatted. So absolutely, we're going to be informing the students as well, but the bulk of the responsibility is going to be on the IEP team. And oh yes, the librarian could also be a potential alt media specialist. I never thought of that, and I think that is such a great idea. So that's just another example of thinking outside the box and calling on the different people, in the village. So okay, thanks for playing the poll. We're going to have a couple more of those, but for now we're going to keep going. Okay, so let's get the screen sharing started again. There we go. Okay, so just in case you're in a school where you feel like you need some more support, I thought I'd put in some advocacy tips here. So, if you're looking for a job description, you can just Google alternate media specialist job description. Remember that having somebody who works in the role of an alt media specialist, it models higher ed workflows. This is how alt media is done in higher ed. And just, pie in the sky, think about if there's somebody who could take care of alt media in your K-12 settings, gen ed teachers could really just focus on the content. TVIs and certified O&M specialists, we could just focus on teaching the ECC, helping students develop their toolbox and skills to access information. So this alt media specialist role is very, very important for supporting the general workflow and service delivery. Okay, so if you guys want more information on the digital workflow, I'd like to refer you to chapters 3, 5, and 6 in the AT book. So chapter 3 is technologies for accessing digital text. Chapter 5 is technologies for producing alternate media. And chapter 6 is strategies for accessing multimedia and data. So this would be like your images and video and data visualizations. Okay. All right, now let's get into the meat of today, the meat and potatoes. The 3 C's of a digital workflow. So capture, cloud, convert. On this slide, we've got a big cloud and we've got a bunch of different media icons for videos, images, people, documents, folders, music, and messages. And then we've got a bunch of different devices. All, we've got a tablet of some sort, a camera, a desktop, smartphone, laptop, and these are all have arrows that point back up to the cloud. So let's talk first about what are these different toolbox items. So what's in our students' toolboxes? So here we've got a few pictures. We've got some mainstream devices. We've got tablets, we've got smartphones, we've got laptops. Any of these could be your Chromebook, MacBook, PC, whatever, but all different variations of those types of devices. And then for our low vision students, we've got document cameras that help with low vision access to either papers or books or even to the board. And then our more specialized version of a document camera is a Mat Connect, which is more of an all-in-one tool, and it includes some read aloud settings as well. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have a dedicated webinar to screen sharing tools. So we're going to deep dive a little bit more into these DocCam and Mat Connect setups and talk about those differences and similarities, okay? And then we've also got all different varieties of Braille displays that students might use to access material in that digital workflow. And I wanted to highlight these Braille displays. They're all on federal quota from APH. And be sure that everybody has at least that baseline understanding of similarities and differences between these Braille displays, because this matters when you're asking a student to access certain documents or do different tasks. You have to understand the pros and cons of different devices that will allow a student to carry out various tasks. So starting on the left, we've got the Orbit Reader 20. So it's 20 Braille cells, and the Orbit Reader is just a Braille display. So there are no brains to it. It's got to be connected to something or have some sort of card, SD card where you've got a book loaded on it, and it's simply just for reading, okay? So very basic reader. Then we've got the Braille Trail Reader. This is a 14-cell device, so a little bit less cells, but this is a Braille display with note-taking capabilities, meaning it's got a little bit more functionality than the Orbit Reader because you could take notes on it. There's like a built-in word processing program. But again, this is one that if you really want to do more stuff, you've got to be connected to a brain, so like a computer. But sometimes it's also nice to just take some notes offline. Or if you want to work on drafting an essay, it's kind of nice to be doing that offline and having a more basic system to do that without having to figure out like navigating through different programs on a computer. And then we've got the Chameleon 20 cells. This is coming soon, so it's not available yet, but I just noticed on the APH website, it says that it'll be here by summer, end of summer, so I guess we'll see. But this is going to be a note taker. So this is an all-in-one note taker. It has its own brains. It can work on its own, basically a computer without a screen, but also you can probably also connect it and put it in display mode as well, like any note taker, to a larger computer. And then we've got this newest offering, which is the Mantis Q40. And this is just a Braille display, no brains, so you have to connect it to a computer. And the difference here is that there's a QWERTY keyboard with function keys along the top. So I see this probably being a little bit more useful for a student who's already got well-developed QWERTY keyboarding skills, maybe an older student who is transitioning to Braille and is just more familiar with QWERTY key input. This might be for that student. or if there's a student who wants to do maybe be a little bit more mobile and maybe doing some coding activities, having the function keys here can be very useful there. I recently was considering this for a younger student, and ultimately I decided against it for my younger student because he already has a laptop with a QWERTY keyboard, and he already has a different Braille display with 6 key entries. So I felt like this was redundant and did not need to be added because it was just too much, because there is such a thing as tech overload and too much tech. So I think this is just something nice to play with, and it's just great to have another option, especially for those older kids who are transitioning to Braille access. Okay, so let's start with that first C, capture. So this is all about, I've got paper media, I've got papers, I've got books. How do I capture that paper media and put it into a digital format? So we've got the built-in camera on our devices. So here's just my iPhone. I can just use my camera and like snap a picture of a page. Sure, that's like baseline, okay, but the quality is probably not great for anybody who's actually taken a photo of a piece of paper instead of scanning it. So that leads us to scanning apps. Scanning apps, it's like our, the old like scanner, flatbed scanners that we used to have. You can also do that with your smartphones or tablets now too. There are a number of scanning apps such as Scanner Pro, Microsoft Office Lens, Claro PDF, KNFB Reader, which just became available on APH federal quota, you guys. This is a $99 app that you can now get on quota. Very high quality scanner. And when you're looking at different scanning apps, you can look at, do they have integrated text-to-speech? Do they have integrated linking with a cloud storage app so I could scan a document and then plop it into my Dropbox or Google Drive right away? And then, sometimes you've got things in a digital format, let's say a PDF, but maybe you just want to take a little digital snapshot or like a screenshot of something. Or maybe you want to take a screenshot of a poster, okay? So you could also do that. And then the last option, sometimes you just have to recreate it. Sometimes you can look at a form or a worksheet and you just know that that's not going to scan very well. So you might have to just remake the form. And sometimes we do still have to do that. So as the live demo for us, I prepared a couple YouTube videos that we could watch quickly. So this one is by Jess McDowell, Jess TVIONM. This is how you'll find her on YouTube. She does great little tutorial videos all about the digital workflow. So this is a 2-minute video on creating a PDF with the iPhone, iPad Notes app. So the Notes app, it's just your basic built-in note-taking app on any Apple iOS device. iOS meaning mobile Apple, so either iPod or iPad or iPhone. And it's just an example of how sometimes you don't even need a scanning app, but you might just have a scanning function on a built-in app. So as you watch this video, I want you guys to think about, would this work for low vision access, or would it work for non-visual access? So how might this be different if I'm preparing material for a low vision kid or a blind student? Do I need to keep the PDF? Do I need to convert this any further if I am thinking about how would a student read this document? How would I take notes on it? And then I want you to always be thinking about, okay, who might be the person to help me with this alt media preparation, okay? So let's go ahead and we will watch the video.
This is a demonstration on making a PDF with your iPhone, even if you don't have a scanning app. So what we can use is the Notes app. So on my phone, I'm going to open up the Notes app and start a new document. And I have an option here that is a camera icon. So if I tap that camera icon, it gives us 3 choices: scan documents, take a photo or video, or photo library. We select scan documents, and it says position the document in view. I need to lift up my phone here, and I snapped a picture. Because I had a contrasting background, it found the borders nicely, and we can say keep scan. So now it says ready for next scan or save. I'm going to go ahead and save. Now I have a note that includes a document up here. So I'm going to tap that document and there's an action button or a send to button in the top right. So if I select that, which is just applied to this document, not to the whole note, if I select that, I get the option to either text that immediately to some of my contacts or open it in a different app or send it with a different application. So right now it's suggesting apps I have on my phone, including Classroom and Seesaw. And let's say I was looking for Google Drive, which I do have on my phone. I could hit more, and then I'm getting several more options, okay, including Google Drive or some other PDF apps, or even iBooks. Okay, hope that helps.
Okay, so I really like this demo of how do I take a piece of paper, how do I scan it? Now I've got it into that digital format. And we're going to talk more about the conversion when we move to the second C. But I also want to get you guys thinking about different things that you can scan. You know, we're going to watch another video here, short 2 minutes, about scanning a book to view on the iPad. And sometimes I think we get a little bit stuck on what's available for our students, where we need to think about how do I just make everything available to our students. So there's also a super quickie way to even take any book in a student's classroom or home and scan it into a digital format. So as you're watching this video, imagine, you know, especially if you've got a student with more significant disabilities, maybe you could call on a family member to just scan some books around the house, and then it could be more easily explored with the student just with a quick swipe on the iPad, or if they've got a switch system, being able to work on a switch that says, like, hey, turn the page or something like that. And you know, think about who might be able to support that workflow, okay? So we're just gonna watch a few minutes of this just to get the idea. We won't watch the whole thing.
Hi, this is a quick video to show one way to scan a book to view as a PDF in iBooks. This option might be something that you want to do for a young student who visually wants to zoom in on the pictures. So I have a couple things here. I have a cheap slant board reading stand that's from an office supply store that goes in a 3-ring binder, folds flat, and there's I think a privacy study screen that's black that's behind my book that will create a contrast to the pages so the app can find the borders easily. And my iPad is in a little stand. It's an iPhone stand, but it's working for this purpose right now. And I have the copy holder and the iPad at about the same angle, so it will scan readily. And the app I'm going to use is called Scanner Pro, made by a company called Riaddle. So let me go ahead and open that. I have a page with my documents here, and there's an orange plus at the bottom that I'll tap to make a new document, and pretty much lined up. At the bottom, I have a couple options. There's the type of document I'm going to create, and I found for a color book, color photo is the best choice. And then there's a manual and auto option. I'll go ahead and hit auto and it will start scanning. So switch to auto, and I might need to move it here to, and it didn't take it itself right there, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the shutter and take that picture. And I'm going to turn the page and see if it found that automatically. And then turning to the first page. It's trying to find it right now. I'm going to grab that one. Just take one more page.
Okay, so you guys get the idea there, where you can pretty quickly, I mean, with very minimal training, all you need is the app and the setup to be able to scan a quick picture book for even our younger kids, or again, those kids with additional disabilities who might have some trouble turning a physical page book. The scanning app that Jess used here is Scanner Pro by Riaddle. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna skip ahead here. So, you know, in all these videos, I had asked you guys to think about, well, how would this work for a low vision student versus a non-visual accessibility if a student needs to access the content non-visually, so either auditorily or with Braille. So how do we make that text read aloud? Because so far, all these scanning apps, it's just getting it into that digital format so that you could potentially magnify on screen. You can either use the actual Zoom accessibility feature to magnify or a pinch and spread. So this brings us to our second C, you guys, convert. So now that we've got the media into a digital format, how do we convert it so that it's an accessible digital format? And this is where it gets a little bit more fun, okay? Or, you know, it might test your skills, but it also has a lot of opportunities here. So the big one here is optical character recognition, or OCR. OCR is getting better and better, and you'll see it like well integrated into more mainstream apps now. You might, you know, open a PDF and Adobe will ask you, do you want this to recognize text? And that's actually running OCR. Or if you're ever in Google Drive and you've got like a Word document, you could actually right click on it, or even a PDF, you can right click and say open with Google Docs, so that when it opens in Google Docs, it's now editable, but you can also navigate it with a cursor, which means it's readable by a screen reader. And what Google Docs, or what Google did when it opened in Google Docs, is basically run OCR on it to reformat it into that readable format. Okay. A lot of the scanning apps now will also have an OCR built in. So I also like that Scanner Pro app a lot because they've recently updated where you can now scan a page and it'll ask you, do you want to recognize text? And if you click yes, it'll actually OCR it right there so that when you open it in iBooks or like open it in Google Docs, it's already in a readable format, which is really cool. And we will, I'm going to demo that during our BYOQ session. The other tool we've got at our disposal here is artificial intelligence. This is getting better and better where the computer will basically use their own brains to figure out what is coming in through the camera lens. So Seeing AI is an app that is available on the iPhone or devices where you can just point the camera at different text and it'll recognize what it is. Google Translate also has this feature as well, which I think is very interesting. There are going to be different apps for different workflows. So, you know, the ones that I mentioned in my previous slides there and my next slide, they're just examples, and there's new apps being developed all the time, but it's going to depend on what are the devices that are going to be used. Is it going to be a Chromebook? Is it going to be an iPad? Is it going to be a PC laptop? Is it going to be a Mac? All of these different things are going to determine which apps are going to be compatible, okay? And then finally, it's going to also depend on the classroom or the district's infrastructure. I'm sure some of you might have run into the issue of, oh, my district does not allow me to download X, or my district doesn't allow this type of app. Sometimes there may just be an alternative app that you can use, and that's just as well. But other times, if you really do need this one particular app and there is no alternative, this is something that you will have to advocate for. So it is possible for IT to basically put your VI kids in a different classification of permissions so that for this group of students, they have permissions to download and use X number of apps. And so the best strategy I found is to just ask for all of the VI kids to be put in this category for permissions so that it makes it a lot easier when I need to download apps. And then it's not, you don't have to go through this process every single time with every single VI student. Okay, so some of the other considerations on the list were, hey, do you think you could annotate this once it's in this digital format, or how would I annotate it? So this really depends on the app that you use. Some apps will allow you to scan and then immediately annotate, like you could just like draw on it or tap a line and allow you to type into a worksheet. It really depends app by app, but if this is something that your student really needs, then you need to look for an app with digital annotation features. okay? So for our low vision students, you might search for apps that allow you to annotate a PDF, and this is going to be your search term, okay? For screen reader or Braille support, these students need truly accessible documents. So you're going to need an app that will allow you to do OCR, but then once you OCR, you most likely need to reformat it so that you've got headings that are structured in the document, and that the document is actually the student can edit it, which means they can read it with a screen reader, okay? So there's going to be another webinar coming up that will be posted. It won't be a live webinar, but there will be a how-to guide on how do I reformat these text documents? How do I reformat images and videos? So that will be a separate tutorial that will be available soon. But just so you guys know for now, some apps that do allow you to do digital annotation. Kami is one that I started using a lot this year. It's a Chrome extension, so it fits right in, especially if you've got a student who's either on Google Classroom, or a lot of my students are on Schoology. It fits right in, very seamless. On the mobile devices, there's Adobe Fill and Sign, SnapType, Sketch, Claro PDF. Claro PDF is a nice one because you can scan something, it'll OCR it, and you can actually read it right in the app or annotate it, and it will actually like highlight the words as it's read. So I do like Claro PDF a lot. And then of course you've got your actual reading apps, which are iBooks and Voice Room Reader, and these also help aggregate any documents that you put in and allow for annotation as well. Okay, so just a super quickie demo of the Claro PDF app, just so you guys can take a look at what I'm referring to. Here we go.
Hi, this is Jessica. I want to show you some apps I recently have been checking out that are quite cool. I'm going to show you in the App Store first. The company, I've searched for Claro Scan, and the company that makes these apps, let me choose this one, is called Claro Software Limited. If you just search for Claro, you're going to get some other apps that aren't the ones we're looking for. So that's how you find them in the App Store. And the company seems to be out of the UK. So let me open up this app here I want to show you. It is Claro PDF Pro. And I have a document here. I'm not going to go through the whole process, so I can just show you quickly what it does that's cool. I had a document that I got a picture of, a piece of paper back here that I got a picture of. It's a worksheet called Ending Punctuation. Now, at the bottom of this page now, I have a play button. I purchased 5,000 credits for 5,000 pages that would be OCR'd for the low price of $3.99. So now this page, as I'm looking at basically a picture of the document, I can hit play.
An exclamatory sentence ends with an exclamation mark.
Okay, there's lots of settings right now.
So I just wanted to show that to you guys real quick, just so you can see what is possible with this capture and convert process, okay? All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this next poll that I had prepared. And basically, we've talked about capturing, converting, and now there's this formatting consideration that I mentioned a couple slides ago. And with formatting, for those of you who've also been working with digital math, it's a big consideration when you run OCR, because sometimes OCR doesn't actually convert things into a digital format that is like readable well. And this happens especially with math. So with math, oftentimes you've got math that get inserted into a document as an image. And right now, when we've got the image, then we just kind of like write the math problem out as alt text. And basically the student has to access the math problem by hearing how the problem is read aloud. But remember that this is not true math accessibility, because you're essentially having somebody read the problem out loud. The student is not actually engaging with the different numbers on the screen or in the equation. So in order for the student to truly have access to the math, they need formatted numbers so that the screen reader can basically, you can cursor through the equation or the numbers and it will read the numbers and it will show up in Braille, in Nemeth on a Braille display. So this is a bit of a complex issue, but I just wanted to touch upon it just so you guys know what, again, those search terms. So know that in terms of math accessibility and digital math, MathML and EPUB formats are the most reliable for our kids who want to do math with their screen readers and on Braille. We are at the final 10 feet of accessibility with math. So the tools and technology are not, they're there, but they're kind of like in pieces that need some workarounds. But we're almost there, you guys. So I'm gonna just play this quick video here about how you can use Equatio.
This is a quick demonstration of how to make accessible math with a remote teaching twist. The programs used in the video are Microsoft Word, top left window, Equatio, bottom toolbar, and Team Viewer, which we will get to later. Let's call this the TVI or support staff setup. And the student is on a Braille Sense Polaris note taker in this scenario. Let's start with making the math accessible for our student whose preferred information format is Braille. On the top right window, we have a PDF image of some equations. Unfortunately, this seems to be a pretty common format for a lot of school curriculum, including math worksheets. Let's say this was a math assignment the student received. We could open the PDF worksheet up and start compiling these problems in an accessible way for our students. We would go to the snapshot tool from the Equatio toolbar and position the snapshot box around the desired equation. Next, we will click on the three dots menu and select Copy Lot X. This will save it on our clipboard. Then, we go to the equation editor on the Equatio toolbar, which is the second option on the toolbar. Once open, we simply paste the equation inside and click on the Insert Math button on the right end of the toolbar. That equation will be automatically pasted right into the current document opened on Microsoft Word, wherever the cursor was currently placed. Pro tip: skip a line before and after an inserted equation. Not sure why, but the Polaris doesn't like it any other way. Let's do that process one more time. Equatio snapshot.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pause this there in the interest of time, but if you guys wanna rewatch this video, and this is one that I've rewatched many, many times, and I feel like I still need to play with it a little bit more. So as I mentioned, I mean, this is still, this process of digital math accessibility, it's still a work in progress, but the tools are almost there. So you can find this tutorial on Neil McKenzie's YouTube channel. If you just look up AT Neil, the video is called Accessible Math Workflow Using Equatio and MS Word, okay? All right, so let's move along to the last C of our 3 C's. So the final C is the cloud. So we've captured the materials, we've converted it, and now we need to share it with the student in the cloud. So the beauty of digital workflows is that you're sharing the materials with the student in real time. So, it's hopefully faster than running down the hall to make that copy or quickly brailing it in the back of the room when you get handed that worksheet when you walk into the room. Hopefully you've got some more immediate access to the digital materials now that teachers are needing to disseminate materials in a digital format anyways. So the beauty of having things in the cloud is that, it's in the centralized storing place in the cloud, right? And now the student can pull down that information using whatever device they want. Like, think about how empowering this is for the students, where they can say, you know what, I want to do this on my note taker today, or you know what, I feel like working on my laptop now, or you know what, I'm gonna use my iPod and Braille display today, or I'm gonna use my iPad. Whatever, right? It doesn't matter. It's the student's choice what device they want to use. Things in the cloud are usually also password protected, so there's some security there. And it's really great because it allows for collaborative work with the classroom teacher and their gen ed peers, or their typically sighted peers, whether you're in an academic classroom or a more functional academic classroom. This collaborative work, again, helps the student not only be somebody who accesses the work, but can be on par with engaging in the work as their peers. In some cases, our blind and low vision students might be a group leader because they've got the work in an accessible format, and they can actually take on some leadership roles too in a classroom learning task. So that's pretty cool. So just a couple examples of cloud storage options. We've got Dropbox, we've got Google Drive or Google Classroom, we've got Seesaw or Schoology, we've got iCloud. I'm sure there's going to be more and more options, but basically the cloud is anywhere where you can store a file and you can access it locally using any number of devices, and it'll save back to the cloud. So what's also really nice is if you do have students who don't have reliable internet, maybe they might be able to go to a library, download everything they need, and then finish working at home. And then they can upload it back to the cloud the next time they get internet. So that can also be a workaround if the student does not have really good, reliable home internet. Okay. And then finally, I just wanted to make one nod to note-taking in the digital workflow to really encourage your students to develop those skills to take notes in a digital format rather than like a paper notebook. So just think about, if your students got notes in the digital format, it makes those notes more searchable. It supports multimodal access, so the student can use text-to-speech to listen to their notes, or they can read back their notes on a Braille display. It supports interdependence, meaning if you've got students who work with a scribe for some note-taking support, that scribe could also take some notes and it's already in that digital format. It's just supplementary to what the student has heard during the lesson. And what's also nice is that depending on how the student takes the notes, these notes can also be the study notes at the same time. So a couple note-taking apps here. We've got Notability, Evernote, Microsoft OneNote, GoodNotes. And then the last one I wanted to just spend a minute here is called Quizlet. So Quizlet has a star next to it because this is technically a flashcard app. But, just thinking outside the box, I really like using flashcard apps as a note-taking system because you can imagine making like a flashcard deck for, in this example, for geometry shapes. And, when I make a flashcard, I'm essentially taking notes on what each type of shape is, except it's in a flashcard format already. So it's sort of like an all-in-one. I took notes and here are my study notes and now I can study and it's all here and the student can access it very independently. And, you can imagine perhaps a scribe helping to put the definition of a parallelogram in, but then the student just needs to hit their little jelly bean switch that's connected to the computer, and when they hit the switch, it will flip the digital flashcard. So on the photo here, we've got just a picture of the Quizlet app. We've got a deck that is on geometric shapes, and it's connected to a computer that the student is accessing with a QWERTY keyboard that's got a key guard so he can slide his arm across and type one letter at a time. He's got a rollerball mouse to be able to move the mouse cursor around, and then a blue jelly bean switch that functions as a left mouse click. So just different ways to think outside the box when things are in this digital format. Okay, so we are rounding out to the close of our presentation, you guys. So we've talked about the 3 C's in the digital workflow. And now you might be thinking, okay, so I know what the 3 C's are, but how do I actually design the workflow and then implement it? Because that's always like the next step. Like I know the pieces, now how do I make everything happen? So workflow design and implementation I cover in the AT book, chapter 8, and we are gonna go to a deeper dive next Monday, 11 a.m. right here, where we're gonna talk about using a needs assessment to get all the information from the student's comprehensive evaluation. How do I put all these needs together to figure out like what is needed? How do I plan for the digital workflow? How do I figure out what that infrastructure is? And then finally, how do I think about scaling up a student's digital literacy skills so that they are able to make those informed choices and decisions about the tools that they use in their workflow? So we're going to talk all about this next Monday, same time, same place. And to end, just wanted to leave you with the YouTube channels that we covered today. We had videos from Jess, TVI-ONM, on digital workflows. From AT Neil, he's got videos on distance and remote learning tips and 3D printing. Diane's also a back pocket resource. She does a lot of Apple accessibility. Luis Perez, more on Apple accessibility. Dr. Denise Robinson, she does a lot on PC accessibility for her blind academic students. And also on the VI program at SF State's YouTube channel, we have a few tech talks that are really just demos of specific technology devices. And then just extra resources. There's some vignettes of just college students talking about their experience with digital workflows. I have an accessibility tip sheet, and all these links will also be posted on the CSMT website and also with this video as well. And then the Perkins Paths of Technology, there's a great blog post that's getting started with technology. And I actually recently wrote up a lesson I did with my 8th grade student about what distance learning means to me. And she talks about how powerful just having this digital media has impacted her learning. So there's a 20-minute lesson that I was able to record with her. And then finally, Veronica with 4 eyes. It's spelled Veronica with 4 eyes, actually. And she's a college student who also does a lot of blogging and tutorials on various AT that has helped her be successful. So to end, next week, we've got how to conduct a needs assessment. We'll also talk about workflow design and implementation. And then after that, we've got screen sharing tools and strategies. And then don't miss us on June 30th, 3 p.m., where we're going to have a BYOQ with live demos, and it'll just be a Techie TVI meetup. And I think with that, we are...
So, Ting, this is Jen. I just want to officially say thank you so much for this, and thank you to everyone who came. As Ting mentioned, we will link everything up on our webpage at CSMT, but if you need something prior, my email is in the chat. Please shoot me an email and I'll get it to you before then.
Okay. Thanks everybody for joining, you guys. I hope to see some of you guys back for next Monday, and sorry for the construction noise too. Okay, have a good one, you guys. Bye.
Sponsored by the California Department of Education, Clearinghouse for Specialized Media and Technology. Video editing by Monica Kulani, SF State VI program.